to be honest, I think it almost sounds like a self-evidently good idea. I mean, in this particular council, Kensington and Chelsea, where they are under so much pressure to rehome people who are utterly desperate. You have more than 600 properties that have been empty for more than 2 years. I do have a slight concern that the sort of idea of requisitioning them feels that, you know, they are owned by people, aren't they?
They are, absolutely, but the council aren't going to run in with a crowbar with 5 minutes' notice. The council have been asking, you know, councils around the country have been asking for more powers because there are a huge number of empty properties around the country.
How would it work?
Basically, what would happen is the council would try and get in touch with the owner of the property, and there are 11,000 empty properties around the country. And, you know, the council will try and get in touch with them, say, this is empty, it shouldn't be empty.
I live in Kensington and Chelsea, right? Why shouldn't you be able, in this country, in a free world, to buy a house and leave it empty?
Because we have a huge housing crisis.
But that's not the responsibility of individual house owners.
No, but...
It's the responsibility of the council and the government to create enough affordable housing to put people in. I mean, you know, if I bought 10 houses and decide with my money that I've earned and paid tax on that I wish to leave them empty, who are you to say that I have to fill them with people?
Because you're contributing to the housing crisis and it's morally reprehensible.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
No,
you
I'm
are.
not.
You are.
You're leaving
If you own 10
empty.
properties and it's empty...
£10 million houses in Kensington and
people...
Chelsea are not anything to do with the housing crisis.
Yes, they are.
Can you imagine how many people they would house?
They're not.
They are.
Sarah Beeny, am I wrong?
Well, I think there is clearly, obviously, there is clearly a housing crisis. What we actually have here is a crisis of affordable housing because there's plenty of houses for sale in Kensington and Chelsea. If you go online and look for houses for sale, there's masses of them. So you could buy loads and loads of houses.
And how much do they cost?
Well, they're incredibly expensive, which is why we've got a housing price crisis, not a shortage of housing. We've got loads of houses.
Do you know how much the cheapest house in Kensington and Chelsea would set you back?
I don't. Do you?
No, I don't.
I just probably. I would imagine.
Of million?
Well, no, because oddly,
Kensington... Flats for £500,000.
Well, no, because Kensington's a very mixed...
That's true.
...batch, actually.
True. And
you have a lot of council properties, ex-council properties and some which are actually quite cheap housing. Should rich people who've bought homes and decide for whatever reason to leave them empty and buy them as investments, why should they have any moral duty actually to do the government's job for them?
Well, I would say that there are other things that are more effective than this proposal. Personally, I don't see... Logistically, it's completely ridiculous to think that a council can take hold of a block of flats and turn it into housing. I mean, who's going to do that and who's going to pay for it? They do have land. They had Chelsea Barracks, but they decided to sell them.
So what is the answer, do you think?
The answer to me is to look at the whole system of social care and social housing and what are we actually trying to achieve. Are we trying to achieve, with social housing, are we trying to achieve affordable housing for key workers? Are we trying to make sure that every single individual in this country can own their own property? Because that's completely unaffordable and totally out of the question.
I mean, Dawn, Dawn, I mean, I know quite a few Guardian journalists. Polly Toynbee's a multi-millionaire, has a lot of property, for example. Will you be leading as a team from the front with this campaign? Will Polly be letting people coming to live in her homes when she's not in them, for example?
I don't know how many homes my colleagues have. I know that I rent, and part of the reason I rent is because there is a big housing crisis.
But my point is there are lots of wealthy people at The Guardian. I know it was great and very entertaining. Here's Laura with the weather.
Love your home, whatever the weather. With Good Morning Britain National Weather, sponsored by Checkertrade.com.
Checkertrade.com.
Good morning to you. And let it not be said that the weather hasn't been looking pretty decent lately, with temperatures on the up, temperatures with much above average for the time of year. But at the moment, we have got some misty, murky conditions lingering, but it will brighten up to be another pretty good-looking day. Now, at the moment, it's low cloud, grey, misty conditions that dominate, particularly for England and Wales. But one positive from that is that the cloud rolled in, it's kept in the warmth from yesterday, and it's a mild start to the day, so you won't need to grab a thicker coat this morning. Thin layers will suffice. Now, through the day, a couple of things happen. The misty, murky conditions for England and Wales lift and break, so skies brighten. We import some clearer air from the near continent, some gorgeous sunshine in the southeast where it'll be warm, but rain across northwestern Scotland later. For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Tuesday, 16th of October, 2018. Live from ITV Studios in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid.
Our main news at just after 7 o'clock. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, will meet with her cabinet in the next few hours to discuss the Brexit deadlock. She is said to be facing potential resignations over fresh proposals to prevent a hard border in Northern Ireland.
More than a third of her most senior ministers met over pizza late last night to discuss their concerns. Our political editor Ranveer Singh had this report for us.
Jeremy Hunt, Michael Gove, Penny Mordaunt and Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab all said to have been at the so-called Pizza Club last night. In fact, reports claim a third of the Prime Minister's cabinet went to the Commons leader Andrea Leadsam's office for the secret gathering, where they had a takeaway and discussed concerns about Theresa May's Brexit plans. It comes ahead of a cabinet meeting today being seen as one of the most important in her leadership, where tensions are likely to be running high. If Theresa May insists on agreeing an Irish backstop that keeps the UK in the customs union indefinitely, she faces the real prospect of ministerial resignations.
There has been other solutions out there. The government are not looking into these other solutions. They've been very dogmatic. They've got in their mind of how they want to do things, push forward with the Chequers Agreement, and they're not going to back down in any way.
Theresa May has been phoning EU leaders in a desperate bid to persuade them to compromise when she meets them at the Crunch Brussels summit tomorrow. She's already said unless Brussels drops its Irish border demands to keeping Northern Ireland only in the customs union, there will be no deal. And that's a scenario the EU Council President Donald Tusk says is more likely than ever before. Ranveer Singh, Good Morning Britain.
In other news this morning, Saudi Arabia is reported to be on the verge of admitting that the missing journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed by their people when an interrogation went badly wrong. Our chief correspondent Richard Gaisford is at the Saudi embassy with more details on this. And Richard, if this is true, this would be a shocking development, wouldn't it?
It certainly would, Charlotte, and it was Donald Trump, the US president, who yesterday laid the groundwork for this, saying, having spoken with the Saudi king, he thought that rogue killers might have been involved. It seems the diplomatic community doing all it can to try and lessen the impact of this on the Saudi regime, however implausible the excuse might seem to many. In fact, Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, has just landed in Riyadh. He's gone to Saudi Arabia to speak with the king and his officials about the disappearance and alleged murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Yesterday, in the consulate in Istanbul, where it's alleged to have happened, we've had the Turkish police searching for 9 hours for clues, forensic experts, scenes of crime officers, prosecutors in there. It's not clear what they found. Their job, though, may have been made an awful lot harder by the fact that you certainly had a big team of cleaners going in beforehand, armed with mops and buckets ready to scrub the place down before the police had a chance to get their hands on the scene of the alleged crime. What is clear is that Jamal Khashoggi had walked through that same door as the cleaners and the police 2 weeks ago today, hasn't been seen since. It's unclear, though, how the Saudis ever thought they might get away with an interrogation or taking a man into custody, someone who lived in the United States and wrote for one of the world's leading newspapers, The Washington Post. Many fingers now being pointed at the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, a man who has led an authoritarian crackdown in the country, trying to modernise it. The issue he has, whether he was involved or not, is that many of the Western companies, Charlotte, he was hoping to attract to help him with that modernisation are now distancing themselves from him and the country.
Richard, thanks for that. Richard Gaisford there outside the Saudi embassy. The UK is fighting off 10 of the highest category cyber attacks every week. Kieran Martin, head of the National Cyber Security Centre, said hostile states were behind many of the strikes, and it was only a matter of time before a so-called Category 1 attack damaged the economy or caused loss of life. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have enjoyed their first official public outing since announcing Meghan's pregnancy. The royal couple are continuing their tour of Australia and the Pacific Islands, despite fears over the Zika virus. Nick Dixon is in Sydney for us with more. Good morning, Nick. A lot of extra excitement there, no doubt, following this news. But over those concerns about the Zika virus, officials say they have taken advice from doctors about whether there's a risk.
That's right, Charlotte, and there are no plans at the moment to make any changes to the tour. In fact, it's full steam ahead, and based on today, she's clearly, Meghan, on absolutely great form. But what the announcement last night about the baby has done is perhaps given her just a little bit of leeway if she does feel she needs to make changes and have a rest, if she's feeling overwhelmed or stressed.